Hi, everybody. It's Ashley of Day to Day Social Work. I am a private online tutor and I specialize in assisting colleagues across the country to pass their license exam in social work on the master's and bachelor's level. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Day to Day Social Work. So, welcome to another video. Just putting out some content for everybody, just related to some things that I've gathered over the last few weeks, couple of months. Just wanted to be a little bit more active on the channel. So tonight I want to talk about practicing within your scope as a social worker. So, of course, I think that most of us who are a little bit more experienced as social workers have a lot of different experiences in a lot of different areas of social work, whether it's in prison social work, mental health, behavioral health, school social work, medical social work, child advocacy, substance use, homelessness, domestic violence, sexual assault, all of those different areas of social work. I think that a lot of us have a little bit to pick from each of those categories. And some of us may only have one specialty or one thing that they're really, really good at or good in, and they are an expert in. And so I think it's great that all of us have a very broad range of experiences to pull from. And I think it's great that we have this platform, Day to Day Social Work, this community to share our experiences within. And I just hope that people will be a little bit more interactive with the videos and the comment sections and kind of network there. And if you ever need a study buddy in your state, then maybe I can connect you with someone in your state, even just as someone to just know as a colleague. I mean, we have colleagues all over the country that are members of day-to-day social work. So if I can ever help you connect with someone, please let me know. So practicing within your scope, I think, is a very big thing. And I think that most of us are aware that we should only be practicing within our scope of competency. So I, for one, would not feel comfortable doing therapy or doing a lot of interventions with someone who has challenges with substance use because I don't have pretty much any experience in that area of social work. And that's really one of the only areas that I have not really delved into because I won't say the interest isn't there, but I just feel like I just haven't gotten around to that yet, as well as military social work. So military social work is one of the next things that I'm planning on working on. But other than that, I have a lot of experience in a lot of different little areas. So very eclectic. But the main thing, the main two things that I personally always feel like are beyond my scope of practice is when it comes to parenting, because I don't have any children, and when it comes to relationships. As y'all probably already know, I am in the process of getting my clinical license. And so I have 5 hours left, and then I'll be eligible to sit for the exam. And couples therapy is something that I think I would like to do at some point in the future. Once I'm married and have some experience being in a marriage. And I know that for some people, marriage doesn't necessarily equate to being an expert or being super knowledgeable about relationships, that some people are very knowledgeable without being married because they have had relationships for years and years without being married. But I think to make it official for some people, you need to have been married or be currently married in order to be taken seriously as a clinician who is practicing premarital, or couples therapy. And so for me, I would like to have the experience first before trying to help somebody else. So couples therapy or premarital therapy or anything dealing with relationships. I won't say anything dealing with relationships, but I think that's beyond my scope of practice. Now, there are some I think that sometimes when people go for individual counseling, they end up talking about their relationships with their therapist, and sometimes even bringing in their partner into an individual session to work through some things. And so I think that something like that I would be more comfortable with doing because I've been in relationships and I've had challenges in relationships. But I think that a relationship is a lot different from a marriage, and I respect the sanctity of marriage. And so I don't think that I personally would be interested in being a therapist for couples or married people when I myself have not been married yet. So I think that's beyond my scope of practice. Now, there are some people who feel okay with that, and I don't understand that. So if somebody could put that in, if that's your way of thinking, can you please put that in the comment section and let me know if you feel comfortable with providing couples or marriage therapy and you yourself are not married or have never been married. Maybe you've had a 10-year relationship or a 5-year relationship or something like that, and you feel like that qualifies you to be able to practice in that area. Please comment below and let me know what your logic is on that, because I'm not saying that anything is wrong with it. I just want to know how you feel about it so I can have a different perspective on it. And then the other thing, like I said, is parenting. So I don't have any children. And this is a very, very iffy one for me, because I feel like a lot of people who don't have children are able to parent, which is why you have foster parents, you have people who adopt and that kind of thing. So I don't think that necessarily biologically birthing a child can be the only way that you can be a parent. But for me personally, I've never fully raised any children. And so I don't think that that is in my scope of practice. So for me, if I were doing therapy and someone sent a client to me for parenting classes, I don't think that I could go up there and tell somebody how to be a parent, and I don't have children myself. And so that's one thing that some people are okay with. Now, there is a therapy called PCIT, which is parent-child interaction therapy. And if you're not familiar with it, look it up. I always tell people to look stuff up for themselves and not to just believe me because I said it, or believe anybody just because they say certain stuff. I think that we do need to always do our own research on certain stuff. But parent-child interaction therapy is therapy to help. It's kind of like behavior modification, but it involves the parent and the child, hence the name. But it's when a therapist observes a parent and child interact, and the parent has a little earbud or not a microphone, an earpiece in their ear, and the therapist is observing from maybe a two-way mirror and watching the child and the parent and telling the parent how to react to the child's behavior. So I think that if trained, I would be able to do that. And that's the therapy that I am looking into becoming trained on, because I do think that it's not the parenting that you're training the parent on, is their interaction with the child. So it's more of a behavioral aspect as opposed to a parenting aspect. So I think I would be fine with something like that, something similar to that. So when it comes to parenting, you have things like topics that come up, namely when it comes to disciplining children. And so I think that that's a very touchy subject for some people, because I don't know about you all, but as I've worked as a social worker throughout the last 10 years, I've come across people with their children, families with children, single moms with kids, single fathers with kids, and then two-parent households with children. And sometimes they would be afraid to discipline their child in front of me because I'm a social worker. And I really hate that, because I feel like you should be able to discipline your child, and this is just me. I feel like you should be able to discipline your child if you want to in front of a social worker. Now, there is a difference between spanking your child, as some people call it, or whooping your child, as other people call it, and beating your child. So I would be like maybe doing a case management session with a mother and child, and the child is doing whatever they're doing, and the mom feels that the way that she should correct the child's behavior is to pop them on the hand or on the bottom or whatever. And like she would be afraid to do that in front of me because I'm a social worker. And I'm like, if you want to spank your child, spank your child. Like in the moment, if your child is doing something and you would normally pop them on the hand, I don't see anything wrong. This is just me. And I'm not saying, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm not saying that this is the correct way to discipline a child. But if that's how you discipline your child and you know that you're not abusing them because that's how you would normally do it, and it's just a pop on the hand or a pat on the bottom, I don't see anything wrong with that. And so the fact that some people are afraid to do that in front of me as a social worker, I don't really know how to approach a situation like that. Like I tell them, like, if you want to pop your child because they're misbehaving and that's how you discipline your child, and do it. But if you're going to pull off your belt and start whooping your child in front of me, I don't want to see that. I don't think that's the correct way to discipline a child. And so when it comes to stuff like this, you are a social worker, yes, but you're also a person. And so you have your different perspectives of discipline as a parent or as someone who's not a parent than someone who has their child in front of you and they want to pop them on the hand as a form of discipline. So I think that it's real murky. I have seen people spank their child and, the child stopped misbehaving and everything was okay. And I've seen people spank their child and the child continued to misbehave. And so, but the parent didn't get upset. So it's a real touchy subject. And so I really would be curious to see what you all think about the debate of, first of all, using a physical form of discipline like that, period. Because for me personally, growing up, I didn't get whoopings. Like, I wasn't a bad child, but I did do stuff sometimes. And so my parents put me on punishment. And I probably would have rather gotten a whooping than to be on punishment, because we would be on punishment for like 7 days. We couldn't play the Nintendo. We couldn't play the Sega Genesis. We had to go to bed at like 7 o'clock and it's still light outside and you hear your friends outside playing and riding their bikes and you're stuck in the house. You couldn't come out your room until it was time to eat dinner, and then you had to go back in your room. And I remember I was on punishment for something, and I think The Lion King had just come out, or either Aladdin had just come out, and I remember my family being in the living room watching it all together, and I had to sit in my room, and you just feel so pitiful. You're just in your room having a little pity party. And to me, being on punishment and having things taken away and also having to do extra chores was way worse than getting a whooping. Now, I only remember getting a whooping maybe twice as a child, and my mom did not like to whoop us. Like, she and my uncle, which is her brother, helped her raise us, and so she would be like, wait until your Uncle Pete gets home. I'm telling him such and such. So he would come home and he would talk to us. He would sit us down, have a conversation. And, I don't even really remember him even whooping us either. It was always punishment. And so I don't know that I would want to whoop my child either, because I didn't get whoopings. I remember my Uncle Pete, I had extra chores and it was my duty to wash the dishes, and I didn't wash the dishes that night before I went to sleep. And so he would wake me up early in the morning before he went to work, like 5 o'clock, run my dishwater, put the little stepping stool up there, and woke me up well before it was time to go to school, and I had to wash the dishes. So I feel like for me, that's a better form of discipline because you are not physically harming a child and you're taking something away that the child actually likes, which I think would probably cause them to think, a little bit harder before they do stuff. Again, I think a whooping is just something in the moment that it hurts for that moment and it passes, and then you get to go and be free and play and do all this stuff. So now that I'm sitting here saying it out loud, though, I wonder if there are any like psychological implications of being put on punishment. For me, no, because it wasn't anything bad. It was like you thought about what you did and you don't want to do it again because you don't want to not be able to engage in the things you enjoy. So I think it depends on how you what you do when you take away things and privileges from your child. Like, is it something psychologically harmful? Or I mean, like, you can't take away the ability to take a shower, or that's neglect. You can't take away a meal, that kind of thing, obviously. But I don't know if some people's parents might do stuff like that. So now that I'm speaking on it out loud, I do kind of wonder about these things. But for me, like I said, it was the no playing the games, no being outside, going to bed early, and that kind of thing. So I'm just curious to know about how your parents discipline you, and how you discipline your children if you have any, and how do you feel about teaching parenting classes. And a lot of parenting classes have a curriculum that you go off of, and I get that. But if I don't have that direct experience of being a parent, I still don't feel like I'm within my scope of practice to teach somebody else how to parent their child, and I don't have any children. So just wanted to know what you all thought about that, and if there are any other instances that you can think of where you might be practicing beyond your scope. Another thing is, and another example is, a lot of times, and I've said this in plenty of videos before, on the exam, if you are asked about the best form of treatment for someone who has an addiction, and you're given the choice between individual therapy and group therapy, which one would be most beneficial? And it's always going to be the group therapy, because you have people in the setting with you who have similar addiction, who may have gone through similar struggles and challenges, who that it will make you feel more comfortable being around these people and hearing their stories and that kind of thing. Whereas individual counseling for someone with an addiction, they may not be able to relate to the therapist if the therapist has not been addicted to whatever the addiction, to whatever drug or vice that this person has is. So it kind of makes sense, because if I'm an addiction specialist, but I've never been addicted to, let's say, drugs or alcohol, and I'm an individual therapist working with someone who is, they may feel like they can't relate to me, or that I can't relate to them because I've never been addicted to their drug of choice. And so, not saying that I can't be effective as a therapist because I haven't been addicted or used these drugs or alcohol, but it's more effective to be in that group setting for them because of all the things that I mentioned before. So I think that for me personally, I don't want to practice anything that I don't have any experience with. And I won't say anything, but I will say most things. Parenting, drugs, that kind of stuff, that's some very heavy stuff. And that's why a lot of times people who are in recovery have sponsors and they have peer mentors, people who are in recovery and people who have had success in recovery. So I don't ever want to be a therapist trying to help somebody with something I haven't been through. And again, I'm not saying that you can't be helpful and effective, but for me personally, I think that I just would not be as effective as someone who has been there and done that. And I think that's pretty much the norm for most things in life. So, like I said, just curious about how you feel about those things. Being a therapist for couples or for parents when you haven't had those experiences yet, and also corporal punishment as opposed to um, having your privileges taken away within reason, and where it's not psychologically damaging. So if you would, then please leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. And so I'm trying out these shorter videos just to kind of have some dialogue with you all and be more involved and try to get people to be more interactive than they have been in the past. So hopefully you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, Day to Day Social Work. If you're not, then please subscribe and like the videos if you like them, and share them with your colleagues and your friends. And I will see you all in the next video.